Now that we know that an animation is a sequence of frames and how that works, we can talk a little about the way we create an animation. When I worked with traditional animation, I've worked in the movie Asterix and the Vikings, and I worked as an in-betweener, because in an animation, we have an animator, and the animator creates the animation, obviously, but they create the keyframes, and also tell us how this movement will be, whether it's gonna be an acceleration, continuous, deceleration. Alright, then, after the animation is done, the characters are just a bunch of sketches. It is not exactly just one line, with its shape drawn. It has many lines just to inform, just to get the idea of that movement, from where the character is, where it's gonna be in the next keyframe, and so on. After that, there's a cleanup, which is the person who will clean that. They're gonna get another paper, put on top, and redraw in the correct proportion of the character, to make it identical to the model sheet. Model sheet is, when working with traditional animation, we have, for example, I used to work with Asterix and Obelix and other characters, but, for example, Asterix, we have a model sheet, which is a printed base, where we can have Asterix from many angles, crouched, standing up, sneezing, screaming, with the mouth closed, saying all the vowels, moving everywhere. So we can see that printed model which is in front of us, and you can see it from many different angles to see how that works. So when you take a half of a drawing, and you can see it in 2/3, and you see it from behind, you can see, for example, how the ear is supposed to be, and then redraw it. That's the cleanup, and this cleanup is done over the keys, and that's where the word keyframe comes from, which are the keyframes, the most important ones from the animation. They are the ones that start or finish a movement. So, after the cleanup comes the in-betweener. And what does this person do? The in-betweener takes one point from here and another point from another drawing, which is a keyframe from here to here. Let's say it's a ball, from here to here. So you need to add another drawing on top, and draw another one exactly in the middle of these two. Then we're gonna have 3. Later, add another sheet, and draw another one exactly then in the middle of these two. And that in-betweener, it creates the exact interval between them. Then, there are some orientations. Sometimes it's not exact in the middle. Maybe it is in third of this interval, if it's accelerating or decelerating. But what matters for us, for architecture or anything, is that the keyframes exist, and the intervals between them, that by hand it would be necessary to draw all of them. But with a computer, that's no longer necessary. And that has helped a lot the animation work. I'm gonna show you here an example of keyframes, in this case, of a walking motion. So as you see here, its leg is stretched forwards. Then another keyframe has its leg bent forwards. Then it's straight, then it's scratched backwards, and then like this. Anything between this and this is an interval. So this leg is gonna be drawn almost bent. And so on, until we have the complete movement. And to show you with all the intervals is something like this. For you to understand, we have the keyframes, and then we have all the intervals to be able to create this movement. Here we can see a bouncing ball. We can see that we have a keyframe here, for example, the ball here, and another keyframe down here. flattened. Then we have these intervals drawn here. We have another keyframe over here, another keyframe down here. It goes down and so on. Then there are rules of animation, just for you to know. The interval between this one and this one is not exactly in the middle of these two. Otherwise, it would start flattening before hitting the floor. It would go up round and start flattening and get to the floor already flattened. That's not how it works. It goes on, it actually stretches, and when it hits, it squashes. So there are ways of creating the intervals. But it's important to understand the principles of real life to be able to simulate that. Another thing is that the movements are always in curve. We almost have no straight movements of characters, but as that's not the case here, camera movements can be straight. If you want to animate a bird passing by, or something more organic, you're gonna notice that the movements are always in curve. We're gonna simulate, for example, with wind, a curtain, and you're gonna notice that the movements are always in curve. There's no curtain that does this. It goes on, curves, comes back, but it's all automatically, okay? I'm just telling you that, just for you to have a general idea about that, but basically, the keyframes are the main key points. So I'm gonna talk here without any example, but later, when we go to the software, you're gonna see it. If you want to animate a car from here to here, we just say that it starts from frame 1, for example, frame 0, and that in 40 frames, I want it to be here, so you just need to say that it starts in 0 and arrives in 40. Then, the rest is done by the computer. It's gonna make the car go from here to here, and we're gonna see that in practice in a bit. I just wanted to explain to you what keyframes are, because that's important for you to know, because it's gonna be easier when we do that in the software. Let's go.